Rob, great to see you, fella, and always a pleasure.
Yeah,
We're
definitely.
well, we're here today because we're both connected with an initiative called Let's Localise, and it's really just to get an update on you and I guess to educate people towards the platform. So let's kick things off by saying how has COVID affected you and your business? How long you got?
As as you can see, my mobile office. I used to have oak panelled offices and very big boardroom tables. Now I've got a car. I, it always happens when we have homeschooling. We've got two 8-year-old. I've got 6 children, and the youngest are 8-year-old twins. So when the schools are shut, and obviously we can't go into the offices, or we shouldn't be going into the offices, then my car is my refuge. It's warm. I got the massage going, heated seats, and cups of coffee brought out to me my lovely fiance. So, so yeah. So do you want, unless you manufacture PPE or you run a logistics business, it's been hard, isn't it, for all of us? Really, the vast majority. It's been a punch in the stomach. Well, 3 times really, for businesses out there and people out there, and I guess there's not much you can do about it apart from perhaps re-engineer, rethink, and reconfigure some of the things that we took for granted. And so business-wise, sadly, we had to sort of shrink the business, and through a couple of redundancies, and also a couple of people on reduced hours. And that's hard, isn't it, on staff morale? And because it has no end. It's not as if you can see light at the end of the tunnel. You can be hopeful, but no, it's been hard. I mean, the positive is the business has bounced back. We've reduced our cost base, and we've had an influx of new business in the last couple of months. So we're looking hopeful for 2021, but we're not out of the woods yet, are we, Adam?
No, we definitely aren't out the woods, Rob, and it's quite interesting because I think you've brought up some interesting points there that it's bad enough from a mental health perspective anyway, but as the CEO, you've not only got to manage all of your own emotions and energies, but then you have to break the hearts and effectively almost ruin the lives of people that have worked for you. I mean, that's a double impact hit. So I guess that sort of moves me on quite neatly to the mental health area. I mean, how do you personally mitigate that?
Well, I mean, as you know, I went through my own personal journey dealing with depression a decade ago, and a suicide attempt overseas, and bounced back. And I think there's resilience in all of us. It's like a muscle, isn't it? We just got to exercise that muscle of resilience. And so I guess having gone through that episode in my life and come out the other side, one of the strategies I employed was to, when things are really looking grim and dark and you can't see the wood for the trees, is to think, well, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst? And it used to be, when I went through depression, it used to be one of the strategies: I'd buy a white transit van, I'd do house clearances, and then I'd sell stuff on eBay. And if I didn't earn enough from that work to rent a place, I could sleep in the van. What I didn't need to do was take my life. I could earn a living somehow, and I could dig in. So I think these days, I'm very fortunate. Life has been good to me in the last 10 years, and it's not been easy, and it's not, hasn't come in 5 minutes. There's no get rich quick schemes that work. It's hard work. You need the support of other people around you that you can chat with, that matter most to you, to open up. And that's another strategy, really, is not to internalize, but actually to speak with folk that you trust, even if it's just one person, to get through it. Everyone's in the same boat, but it's somehow easier, isn't it, to support someone and just be a friend and a listening ear.
I think there's a lot misunderstood about the power of a good listener. I mean, I don't know how you've been impacted by this, Rob, but what I'm finding is the conversations that I'm having, I'm spending most of them saying nothing. And really having people that hold that space when people are in the, well, let's call it the challenging mental health zone. I mean, it takes energy and support, and really it's gold dust getting somebody to listen to you and not try and talk over you or interrupt you or just be there for you. So I think you brought up a really, really good point there. And
yeah, I mean, definitely the listening aspect. The other strategy is I've re-engineered some of the things that I've done in business. So I've created some new products off the back of COVID, rather than sit and be hit in the stomach by external circumstances that I can't control and government policy and the rest of it. So one of the things I've done is I've got a group of 10 fellow business owners together, and I do group online coaching with them once a month. It's a chargeable service, so it's a revenue generating for me on a personal basis. But more importantly, it helps 10 fellow business owners through a difficult time. There's safety in numbers, strength in numbers, and it's a new product and a new revenue stream. And that was off there. And at the end of the 12 months of the group coaching, it's an international flavor to it. We're going to sit down and write a book. So each member of the group is going to contribute a chapter about the ups and downs of growing a business during even during a recession. So there's always good, isn't there, that can come out of adversity. It's perhaps reconfiguring, taking stock and thinking, well, I'm going to do something a bit different.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
sounds easy, doesn't it?
Well, I always thought that. I mean, I went to, in my early days in the business, I went to a lot of lectures of experts that were going to tell me how to make a lot of money. And I think it's like most things, once you lift the lids on certain businesses or claims, then it doesn't, it can be a bit disconfiguring, shall we? A, how did anyone let this person on the stage in the first place? And B, what am I doing here?
Well, I've always said, I concur with you, mate, because I think there's only one way to get rich quick, and that is to sell courses for £1,997 on how to get rich quick. That's the only way. The rest of us, it's hard work. It takes years, and you have things that don't work, and you have some things that really, make you happy and do work. But it's hard, and I'm a great believer, and I have done over the last 10 years. I've been learning, dealing with mental health within me, is to anchor in with people that I trust, and we have mutual support. Whether it's a mastermind group, it's a coaching group, whether it's just, hey mate, well, when we used to be able to go to the pubs, go for a drink, go for a beer, go for a curry of an evening. It doesn't have to be a therapist in a leather back chair, does it? On a chaise longue.
Well,
I know I'm preaching to the converted.
Oh, you totally are. Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff I learned as a nurse overlapped neatly into the world of business, Rob. And one thing that I learned is just doing something like organizing a team night out once a month. We used to do it on the Friday after payday. And
right.
It was pretty much down to me to organize that. So I obviously organized it around my own schedule. So I selfishly was well sorted on that front. And it became the toxic Friday that no one wanted to work because it was the one night that we were all out in the pub. And what I found is that the attendance got better because people were quite happy to throw a sickie and stick it to the NHS because they've had their pound of flesh. But they'd be less likely to do a sickie if their mate, who they now know from the pub and has got a bit of personal insight and get to know on a much deeper level and more, less superficial as it would be when you're at work. And that principle transitions over. People like people, and if you're working with a team that inspire you and you resonate with on a deep level, then you're less likely to want to throw a sickie, and that is great team management. So the pub was an essential element in our well-being strategy.
Do you know what? The last charity auction, I regularly go to charity auctions, and usually have like the boxing glove from someone, signed boxing glove, an Arsenal shirt that's been signed by. And I mean, they're fine. My boardroom is littered with lots of framed this, that, and the other, usually sports memorabilia. But the last one I went to before the lockdown, I successfully bidded on something really unusual, never had it before, and it was donated by the police, the Thames Valley Police, which was a riot day. So you and 15 other people, i.e. my company, take part all day as a riot squad. So it was training for the police, all kitted up, and we would have to throw Molotov cocktails, bricks, and generally be loud and leery towards the police all day. And
sounds like great therapy to me, Rob.
I thought that was a brilliant donation. And again, it's the sense of team, isn't it? It's not having, I mean, team building weekends have their place and the rest of it. But my team loved the idea. When I told them what I bought in the auction, they were up for it. I had to bid really high as well because there was lots of other business owners wanting the same thing.
Well, they're probably the same generation that would have been going to football matches round about the 80s, looking for alternative therapy. If we can't work against them, we might as well work with them.
Yeah, because you used to be able to go to Millwall Football Club and do it for free on a Saturday afternoon.
And you have to pay nothing. Except for the optional ticket to get in the stadium to justify your presence outside. So I hear you there, Rob.
Yeah. I think it's just being creative, isn't it? And it's human contact, the DNA. This is why lockdowns are, for most people, just really cuts against the grain, because it's in our DNA to be social, to have human contact with people. So I mean, again, the response. I can't change the world, and you can't change the world, but we can change our own micro world, can't we? That we live in. We can make differences ourselves, rather than feeling that we're out of control and everything else, is predestined by other people.
Oh, I totally hear you, Rob. I mean, I think it's like a ripple effect, and you can't control what everyone else is thinking or doing, but you can control your own mood and energy, and that will influence people in your immediate circle. And if you're sending out positive ripples from that point, then that can be a good thing. But if you're not, then I think that's the mental health awareness. Probably time for a checkup, therapy.
Yeah. Are you part of the solution, or are you the problem? I think I've had to control in the last year the amount of mainstream media and social media that I watch, because we've polarized, I think, as a society, and I don't think we're unique in the United Kingdom, but we had 4 or 5 years of Brexit where there was a polarization of society, and COVID and vaccines, that's polarizing on social media. And I actually don't think social media is real life anyway. So I've really had to control, because what you eat is what you become, what you take into yourself. And so I've had to learn to restrict what I'm watching, and in fact sometimes who I'm connected with, because there are some people out there that are just a drain. And you know, I know 4 of them. There's 4 people I know that I'm no longer connected with, who they have a problem for every solution. And you give up, and I've known these people a long time. You give up trying to provide solutions eventually, because they always say, oh yeah, well the trouble is, or I've done that, etc., etc. So I think we have a responsibility, which is where Let's Localise comes in, really, to think outside ourselves. And it does good, but it does good in the community, but it also does good for you inside as well. You know, it's a win-win, isn't it? Being able to think outside of your own box. And so that's why I was an early adopter with the Let's Localise initiative, and you could always find time to do something and be part of something. And I'm a busy guy. I already support 2 charities. I have a dozen private clients, and I own 4 businesses. But you can still find time to. My grandparents used to, or our grandparents used to say, to do our bit. You know, do our bit for the effort.
Well, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I mean, it's neatly brings us into the corporate social responsibility realm. And what is your opinion on that, and what's currently being given out? how socially responsible are the corporates in general?
Yeah. Oh, how honest do you want me to be?
Well, you know me, Rob. Let's not flower it up.
Okay, so I have quite a strong view about CSR, corporate social responsibility. I think it's a myth. Let me put it in context. I think it's used like a lot of things, like investors in people, which was really investors in paper, if you remember that years ago. It's like a lot of initiatives that come down from government. It's a good idea, but the way it's executed is not thought through. And I know there's a lot of companies and a lot of corporates that have a policy, but they don't do anything about it. They do it because they want to tick a box and they want it on their website. But actually, it's meaningless. It's a bit like having a mission statement. You know, we went through a period, didn't we, years ago in business, where everyone had to have a mission statement, and they all kind of pretty much sounded the same. I think we bought the template from the same source. So we don't have, in my businesses, we don't have a CSR policy.
Yeah.
But we give out a lot to the community, and both personally and as a company, because it's the right thing to do, even though we don't have a policy. Amazing, isn't it? You can take action without having a policy.
It's unbelievable. Well, it's funny you should mention policy and mission statements, Rob, because what I used to do, I used to go into some quite big corporates and do stress management training. And part of it was, okay, well, let's take the company mission statement. And I'd warm people up and I'd say, right, you know, how does your company mission statement fit in with you, and what does it mean? And do you even know what it is? And
that's the question. Yeah.
I actually shamed senior management. Well, I call shame. I don't think it is shameful. I think it's actually the organization's role to either drill it in or don't use it at all. And it's clear that they weren't doing either. And I mean, these are big organizations that we're talking about here. So I do concur with you. Is it lip service, or is it actually making a serious difference?
Yeah, I mean, there is a line of thought that if you're giving and charitable or giving to something else, to do it in private.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is where I think some things in social media, people go wrong. They make a big thing of charitable giving in order to get the likes and the subscribers up on YouTube. And it's nothing about the giving for them. It's about their own social media presence and upping their visibility. They're just using that. Some people are using it. So I have this it's a double-edged sword, really. It's every business owner, I believe, should give something, because and that doesn't matter whether it's big or small. It's the giving that counts rather than the size of the gift. And let's face it, there's over 5 million SMEs in this country. If all 5 million SMEs gave something of themselves, whatever that was, whether it was time, equipment, resources, money, whatever it is, that would be a phenomenal phenomenal effect within the UK.
I completely agree. And how engaged do you think that the average corporate is at the moment? Should I ask you to leave that question?
I'll leave it to your editors to decide what goes in and out. Generally, very little is my experience. They're more interested in their bottom line, and I don't mean that in an utterly disparaging way, because clearly you're responsible to shareholders, and if the business isn't going well or struggling, then it's very, there is a priority. You've got to look after the business, look after the staff, but that doesn't mean at the exclusion of looking at other things or just contributing. It's not an either or. I don't see it as a binary thing. I know the focus for corporates and businesses is on a lot of them is survival, but you can still give out of your poverty. I think there was a book 2,000 years ago that talked about giving out of your poverty. The Widow's Mite, I think, was the parable, if I remember right from my Sunday school. So there's clearly some exceptions where there's some companies that do it come rain or shine, and they do it out of the right spirit rather than it being a tick box exercise, because that's what the business mood is all about with CSR policies. So, but I think it's that much harder, isn't it? And charities say, I'm involved with 2 charities. One is a cancer charity, another one's an orphanage overseas. And they always say that during times of austerity and difficulty, donations and people's time reduces. And it's easy to criticize. It's easy to criticize that, and I totally get it. But if every one of us did something once in a while, it would have a massive impact. Massive.
Yeah, it's I don't know, did you ever see the film Pay It Forward?
Yes. Yeah. It's just acts of kindness.
I thought it was a little
bit. You're right. I mean, isn't it a wonderful thing that each of us has a responsibility? Arguably, it's not an onerous one, because even if it's just doing something once a day, each of us, that's perhaps a little unexpected, helpful to someone else, that's just a massive tonic, isn't it, to the person who's receiving it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. You brought up an interesting point, Rob, because I remember a couple of years ago speaking to somebody who worked for one of the big brands that specifically dealt with footballers, and would take them for the tour around the factory and pretty much give them all the freebies. And what was interesting was that they had asked certain professional footballers to go along and do charitable stuff because of the PR. And what was interesting is how some of the big names just did it without any question, and others would phone up their media manager, make sure that they were accompanied by exactly what you said earlier, that are you doing it because you know that giving's a good thing, or are you doing it because we've now got a photo for social media and it ticks a box? So I do feel quite similar to you on that front, and that really sort of moved me on to Let's Localise, and why I got involved is because it's a simple concept that plugs schools into the local communities, And how, from your experience, because you've engaged with Let's Localise, you've been part of the campaigns, Rob. I mean, how have you
Yeah.
found that process? How has it been for you?
I think it's been straightforward, really. I think that the contact isn't too onerous, because sometimes when you're busy, and most of us are busy, it's hard to be sort of giving time can be difficult. A lot of time to any one thing can be difficult, but it's quite low maintenance, really. And I have found, certainly with equipment, it's easy to collect stuff as a business. And people say, you know, and because you ask the question, you can ask the question, and this happened with me when I first got involved with Let's Localise. I asked the people in the office, have we got any computer equipment or anything like, you know, that would be helpful to a school lying around doing nothing? And the answer was no, it's all allocated. So I started looking through cupboards. And lo and behold, there's stuff. I think it's a bit like when we're at home, isn't it? We've got stuff in the attic and we forgot, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot of stuff in buildings, in commercial offices and factories that could be quite useful, that we forget about, or it's tucked away, or in a room that's very rarely accessed. So Let's Localise just, I found myself, it just prompts you into thinking about it. Otherwise, we're just being busy, aren't we? We're almost on the conveyor belt of life. So yeah, so I think that's a really good tip for business owners, is just have a look around. Don't necessarily take what your staff say as gospel, but have a look in cupboards, have a look around the offices and think, have we used this in the last 5 years or in the last 12 months? Are we going to use it? Do we need this projector or these 100 projectors that are in storage? I don't know. It's but it's not just equipment, is it? It's time as well. And even if you haven't got lots of kit that could be donated, or with money, you can. The most valuable asset we have, of course, isn't on a balance sheet. It's time. And you know, to give of your time to something is a remarkable thing, and it has real power to the people receiving it. So yeah, even if you've got no money, no surplus money, no spare equipment, there's a bit of time we can give.
And that's it. And there is that opportunity to donate time through the platform, but also connect people in with communities. So, I mean, the reason that I got involved is, as a nurse, I saw one of the bigger problems that we have is communities become very disjointed, I think, in this day and age. It's interesting, isn't it, that we're more connected online and less connected offline than we've ever been before, certainly in my lifetime. And loneliness is a big issue, especially for the elderly generation. And what I really liked about the concept of Let's Localise is that it gives people a chance to plug in and do good things and reconnect with their local communities, as well as giving back to schools and possibly helping the next generation of kids who are, some of them are at home now with no tablets, no laptops, and unable to engage in the online lessons. And from speaking to my friend who is a teacher, who is in the coalface of things, and talking about these real practical aspects, that what do you do with a kid that hasn't got access to a laptop or a tablet? You know, and as you say, there's probably a few second-hand ones sat in cupboards for people that they're no use, probably won't be used again. And it is an opportunity to re-energize, to recycle and do some good with what effectively is junk in the office. It is.
And yeah, it just needs that little prompt, doesn't it? And you are right in what you just said. We are highly connected in the 21st century through technology, but we're the most disconnected, I think, as society than we ever have been, because it isn't real connection. You know, it's virtual. And whilst it's better than nothing, it's not like being in a room with someone. you know, sharing a meal together, and, you know, giving someone a hug when you haven't seen them for a while. You know, that you miss that. And I it used to be, when I was a kid, we used to go out and we didn't have the internet, of course. Well, it might have been out there somewhere. But,
Not yet.
No tablets, no computers, no Sega Mega Drive with Sonic the Hedgehog. That hadn't been invented. So most night or most evening,
ZX Spectrum though, Rob.
even before that, I'm still older than you, mate. But I used to go and play football in the park just around the corner with other kids, and that was most afternoon evenings. I'd watch a bit of telly, but that was about it. Well, when there was 4 channels, not 4,000 channels. But there was something about interacting with people and making your own fun, going and climbing up trees.
Yeah.
You know, and in someone else's property. Yeah, committing petty acts of criminal activity, you know, as part of childhood. But now I've found that, because I've got a number of children, they stay at home largely because they have the tablets, the phone, the social media platforms, and it's not necessarily very healthy. And it does affect us as a society that we're not as connected, unless we have to make the effort to be connected now. In terms of proper connection, in the room connection, leaving aside COVID restrictions. So I don't know what the answer to that is, apart from banging the drum, so that we don't lose touch with each other and we don't rely on technology as our main source of connection with people.
Right. I mean, I think when you were talking, it sort of dawned on me that we each lead by example, and I've had some interesting debates with teenagers over this lockdown about actions versus words, and we're back to the parents saying, "Don't do what I do, do what I say." That pearl of wisdom that was passed down the generations.
Do you know the Romans had a word for it? The Romans.
What was that?
Well, years ago, I was going to set up a company called Facta Non Verba, which is Latin for actions, not words.
I like it.
Facta Non Verba.
Facta Non Verba. Well, let's face it, Latin and the Romans were definitely a good example of action, no verba.
I don't know what they ever did for us, really, Adam.
Well, exactly. And it's funny you should mention that, Rob, because when I've had people that go into the serious mode, and let's face it, there's quite a lot of people at the moment, it really is. It boils back to Monty Python for me. It almost seems prophetic in the way that they looked at the world, and keeping your sense of humor as a mental health intervention. I think for me, that's one thing that the UK is great at. I mean, you're right, we might grumble and complain when everything's good, but we're also the ones that I'm getting sent from my friends, like ridiculous memes that probably, you know, I'm sure if somebody saw my entire messages, that you could have me labeled as pretty much anything you wanted. But the point is that I have laughed my way through this because of really good friends sending me stuff. Some of it's brilliantly funny, others just wrong. But because it's wrong, and because of the world we're in and the high censorship and being told what we can and can't laugh at, I mean, that's what makes it funnier. And it's really got me.
Yeah.
Having good friends with a sense of humor, I think, is a really helpful thing for a time like this.
Don't take me down the route of political correctness.
No, we won't go there, Rob. And I am aware that. Don't even start. No. Adam, resist. Leave political correctness alone. I'm sure they're doing their best job for all the right reasons.
But you are right. I mean, you can have humor even in darker situations and when things look pretty crap, to be honest. You can be if you have that humor and you take it lightly, I've learned in business never to get too excited and never to get too despondent, because you'll have the peaks and troughs in business and you have the peaks and troughs in life. And it's okay, isn't it? It's okay not to feel at the top of your game all the time. And I think this is, again, having a pop at social media again. It's our best version of ourselves, social media, isn't it? Whether it's personal or business. So there is that danger in social media platforms where it's a keep up with the Joneses. Oh, they've got a fantastic life.
Yeah.
Because you only see the best bits on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point there, Rob, and I actually put out a video saying, there seems to be a lot of people complaining about wearing masks right now, when in actual fact, if you were to look at their social media profiles or what they're putting out there versus what's actually happening in their lives, I would argue that people have been wearing masks for most of their life. It's just more apparent now.
Yeah. I was going to say something, but I won't. You're right. Yes. Correct.
Well, do you know what, Rob? In fairness, I can see, I've spoke to you many times, and I know our conversations can spiral off in a random direction. And I'm very much aware that we put this together for Let's Localise. So
yeah.
I guess before we spin too randomly off in a different direction, I guess we should conclude this just really by summarizing about giving back and corporate social responsibility. What would your summary be on where we're at and what's the next step? What's the way forward?
I would definitely recommend that people get in contact with Let's Localise. And what I like is even a small contribution goes a long way. So why not do it? Because it's something giving out will, I know from personal experience, left to your own devices, it probably wouldn't happen. But where you're linked into a community and you're seeing stuff that's happening and things are being put out there, it can then prompt you to think, oh, right, yeah. Because it's easy to lose sight of things, isn't it? You can be very positive about something, think it's a good idea, and then do absolutely nothing about it in the ensuing year. So
it's like going to the gym, Rob, for a lot of people. New Year's resolutions.
Well, it's part of the human psyche, isn't it? You can say, oh, I've read this really good book. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki 20 years ago. I thought it was a good book. I did absolutely nothing to apply any of those principles because it never came back on my radar. So the good thing with Let's Localise is that if you link in with the community, you can see what other people are doing, and it can sometimes inspire you or give you an idea or think, oh, actually, do you know what? We can do a similar thing as well. So it's nice to get that very gentle prompt.
Absolutely, and I think it's good to also plug into your local community and see what's going on. So that seems like a reasonable conclusion. I see Gaurav's joined us now for this. So if there's anything that you'd like to add, Gaurav, now would be the time, sir.
Absolutely. I think it's amazing conversation. And I see one person in an aeroplane cockpit, other person in the car cockpit, and both of them having a great chat.
Well, this represents the world as we know it at the moment. You've got to hang in and try and see the bigger picture. Hang on in. Maybe I should be sat like this.
When he lands, I'm his chauffeur, and I'll take him from the airport to wherever he lives. So I'm his taxi. Yeah.
Whether he's land on
my world.
Whether he'll land in his airplane or parachute, I don't know. But something he'll do. He'll come down.
Exactly.
That's good. Thank you so much, Rob. The camaraderie is quite visible, which is what is the good part. And we have been blessed with a lot of like-minded people joining. And it's just amazing to see how the thought process is evolving and newer ideas are coming in. And you would actually be very surprised, Rob, how the CSR has evolved along the time, along the lines of what you were talking about, how it really benefits the organizations and companies like Legal in General and other folks, Cognizant, 3 are coming in because they want a lot of their employees to offer this service. 3 shared with us that almost 75 to 80% of the time off that they give to their employees, requesting them to spend time with local community work, whether it's charity or whatever else, comes back without being used because people are not able to find those opportunities. Other people just take a day off, do all those kind of things rather than actually doing something. And that's what they like about this. They're like, if we can get all the schools in Maidenhead, whenever that happens, at least all our employees can find out different things that schools want help with. And at least that gives them an opportunity to easily discover that and go out and do something. If they decide not to do anything after that, well, that's their choice. But it's not because it's kind of interesting how people are coming in. We are putting in a membership model in place. We have got things like an author wanting to reach out to schools, wanting to talk about his book. And at the moment, he does it in a physical way where he goes and visits the schools, 15, 20 schools, and that's it. But now, suddenly he's able to do a virtual Zoom session with hundreds of schools, and he can charge the same amount of money. So he's like, my income goes up. I'm able to give more back to the schools. Schools benefit, and it's just a win-win-win situation for all of them.
Yeah, and,
exactly.
And I think there's no better audience to tap into than the younger audience. That's what I'm finding. They're a lot more receptive. They're not sort of battered by life and fixed in their opinion. So it's a bit like us, right?
Speak for yourself, mate.
I like to think.
Own me out of it.
I've found my second win, as it were.
I'm not carrying any baggages, Rob. No more baggages. I like the fact that you said that in business. That's when I actually came in. When you said in business, there's no point in getting overexcited or being taken down by the setbacks. That's common. These knocks of life are common to everyone. People may show up in a different light, but that's a common theme. Everybody, each one of us has gone through it. There are highs and lows. Absolutely. And the best thing is to know the highs won't last and the lows won't last. It's just a case of trying to be as stable as you can, because when the lows hit, it tends to kind of pull you down. But if you can somehow keep your mental balance at that point, knowing that it'll get over. It's a matter of time.
No, we are stronger together. That's how we're meant. That's how we're built.
Exactly.
It's to help each other.
Exactly. And likewise, when the highs are there, don't be arrogant, because you'll come down.
From a very big height.
Yes.
Long way to fall once you get there.
Absolutely.
We all end up in the same place anyway, but we won't go down that route.
Yeah.
Yes.
We start the same way, we have different experiences, and we end the same way. Exactly. It's just the middle bit that's different.
Exactly. I was reading a book an article a few days back. They asked me, in the article said, if you want to know how rich you are, drop a tear and see how many hands come to wipe it off. Right? That's what is the level of richness, right? So it's not having zillions, millions, or whatever. Drop a tear and see how many hands come to wipe it off.
But the trouble is with that at the moment, Gaurav, is you might have COVID. And I'm sorry to be facetious on a very interesting thing, but I think this is an example of you've got to keep your sense of humor.
Absolutely.
Because it does strike me that this whole pandemic, what it's doing is it's breaking communities apart. It's splitting them up, it's keeping them in isolation.
Exactly.
I think is the bigger picture problem that we're all having to deal with at the moment. And as soon as the government restrictions are lifted, I think what LetsLocalise offers is a great platform for people to reconnect.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Continuing on with the humor part, I already shared that with you, Adam, but maybe Rob, I haven't. A psychologist, a friend of ours, while we were talking to you, and he said, in pandemic, it's very common to talk to the walls. So do not feel bad if you're talking to the walls. come and reach out to a psychologist if the walls start to talk back to you.
I love those existential jokes.
You've got to love it. And I've met some interesting walls in my time. They're great listeners, Gaurav. Great listeners.
Yes, they're absolutely awesome. And yes, so I think, we have now talked about, we are 100 schools live, Rob and Adam. It's now there visible on the
Brilliant.
We started with 5 in March, in less than a year,
Yeah.
20 times. And we are hoping to get up close to 1,000 this year. And there are and there are about 150 schools in pipeline. They should be coming on board during the next couple of months. And the best part is, out of the 250, 300 odd head teachers that we have talked to, not even a single one has come back and said they wouldn't want to be part of this. Not even a single one. It's amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, the schools have been battered, haven't they? Particularly in the last year. And I mean, who would want to be a head teacher in the last 12 months? Absolute nightmare for them to, and finding out on the eve of when they're due to go back after Christmas, finding out that they're closed. I mean, how can you run a business like that, let alone a school? So I think what's being done with the schools is fantastic, and they do need organizations like LetsLocalise to help them. Otherwise, they could probably feel they're trying to battle it alone, and that's not true. But they need to have a tangible evidence that the community is with them.
Yes, that's very important. Absolutely. Sounds good, Rob. Sounds good, Adam.
All right.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome having you both on the call and sharing your wisdom, Rob and Adam, as usual, bringing in the mix of humor and realistic talk. It's been awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Cheers.
Pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Rob.
Cheerio, guys.
Good to see you.
Cheers now. Bye now.
Take care now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.